back in 2003, you were the former security secretary in Hong Kong, and it was you who took the lead to propose the national security issue at the LegCo meeting in Hong Kong. We all know that it was not passed. Why does the central government want to discuss it now?
Because there are obvious gaps in our legislation. We don't have the offense of secession or subversion or measures against local terrorist activities or measures to prohibit infiltration by external forces. So these gaps in our legal system need to be blocked. Moreover, events of the past year clearly show that there are terrorist activities in Hong Kong and there are separatist activities in Hong Kong which need to be dealt with. Given our inability to implement Basic Law Article 23 in the foreseeable future, I think the central government has no alternative but to present its own version of national security law which is applicable to Hong Kong.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Beijing's plan to discuss a new national security law for Hong Kong equals to what he calls a death knell to the high degree of autonomy Beijing promised for Hong Kong under the Sino-British Joint Declaration. What do you think?
I think that is a blatant interference with our internal affairs and a complete disregard of our responsibility to protect national security, given that we are an inalienable part of China. Every country has national security legislation, and the U.S. has large numbers of national security statutes and measures. And so these comments are totally unfair.
And U.S. is threatening to cancel Hong Kong's special trade status. What do you think? What impact will it bring to Hong Kong?
Based on their assessment that we are not sufficiently autonomous in their view. But actually what we have is a high-level autonomy as provided under the Basic Law. Based on their own interpretation, they have been threatening to cancel their differential treatment of Hong Kong under their laws and programs. In terms of trade, the effect will be minimal because, number one, Hong Kong has very limited domestic exports to the U.S. By slapping duties, heightening customs duties on Chinese exports to U.S., our re-export has already been affected. And secondly, Hong Kong is a founding member of the WTO. Even if the U.S. withdrew the most favored nation status for Hong Kong, the EU, Japan, other countries will continue to grant us that status. Moreover, we already have free trade agreements with Australia and the ASEAN nations. Moreover, U.S. enjoys the highest single bilateral trade surplus with Hong Kong. I think in 2019 it amounted to something like 28 billion US. And if U.S. imposed measures that hurt Hong Kong's economy, it would also be hurting its very substantial commercial interests in Hong Kong. I know that the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong also has a lot of misgivings about sanctions on Hong Kong. And I think they will also be working hard to persuade their government not to impose sanctions that would affect their own interests.